Deltarune Chapter 5 was officially announced and it's right around the corner if it's not already out. To celebrate this and prepare for our next adventure, I want to discuss about the lore and mystery of one of the most important elements of the game that will probably be the key to the true ending of the game, and that is the holders of the shadow crystals, the secret or hidden bosses as they are known in the community. These are very hard optional fights that rewards us with powerful weapons and the mysterious shadow crystals, items that Sham says can be used to craft something useful to us for later, and they say only 5 pieces are needed, which means the last crystal and possibly the last hidden boss will be in chapter 5. The item Sham will make will probably be a weapon that will unlock other secret boss fights, or even the final one, something like Azrael Dreamer in Undertale. Go watch my video about Sham and the shadow crystals if you want to know more about that. So today let's take a deep dive into the lore of all the hidden bosses we have so far, which is chapter 4. The first one on the list is Jevil. Jevil is a mad jester that had gone rogue and was imprisoned in a cell in the lowest level of the card castle. In the past, Jevil was the court jester and his best friend was Sham, the court magician. Sham was the only one who could match him in power and they used to play games together. The way Sham describes this, it looks like they play deadly games trying to kill each other with powerful attacks to test their strength, but mostly to have fun going all out. But one day everything changed. Jevil met a strange person and since that encounter they had become mad. We don't know who that person was. It could have been the Roaring Knight. Jevil does praises the knight and spreads their intention and plans of opening dark fountains around the world, but it seems more likely that they meet someone else who has a deeper knowledge of this world. After this encounter, Jevil talks about how everything is a game and everyone is participants, and he is right. This is a game filled with NPCs. Also, Sham says that their vision of this world had become darker yet darker after they listened to Jevil's words after he became mad. A line that is famously used by Gaster, and he looks to have a lot of deep knowledge about the nature of this world. Maybe he is the one that knows the most, but we can't say for sure. It might as well just be another character that we don't know just yet. People love to play the Gaster card at every mystery, even I am guilty of this video included, so maybe Gaster is not involved this time. Sham also describes Jevil's words as making and not making sense. What he says sounds crazy and impossible, but looks to be true the more you know and think about it. Like how this is just a game, or how the light and dark world functions, or even the fate of this world and the identity of the strange man. Sham looks to have lost all hope and thinks everything is meaningless and doomed to end after they talk with Jevil. Anyways, after Jevil had become crazy and started to talk about games, the night and dark fountains, he became dangerous. It is also possible that he might have started to attack the other Darkners, so his best friend Sham had to lock him away at the order of someone else, probably one of the other 3 kings. And even now, Jevil thinks that everybody else is behind bars and he's the only one free, which shows how distorted his vision of the reality is. The crystal seems to have that kind of power. In the dark world, the crystals shows things for what they really are, inanimate, lifeless objects. But the other Darkners seems to know that as well, so it doesn't look like this was the main reason they were drove mad. In the light world, the crystal seems to show a dark future or the user's worst nightmares or fears, like how Chris sees their hand missing, which looks to be a reference to a traumatic event from the past that maybe involves death, or how they see their friend Susie looking coldly at them. So this could have happened to Jevil. He saw the Titans and the doom of the entire universe, not just of the light and dark world. The gang can get the key from Sham and free Jevil, then they can either defeat him or put him back to sleep. So far it is not clear if your choices matters. Chapter 3 and 4 don't give you the option to spare the secret bosses, so we will have to see. So Jevil is a powerful jester that had met a strange figure that gave him a shadow crystal. He learned the truth of this world and he had gone mad because of it. His friend Sham had gone nihilistic because of the same knowledge. Jevil became an ally of the night and spread the world and the glory of the dark fountains, tempting the others to open more dark fountains for more power and dominance. And they were locked because of all of this. This plotline will be very similar to the next secret boss and possibly even the others. We don't know what happened with Jevil after this. If you do the pacifist route, Jevil just remains in the cell. It is possible that they are somewhere in the castle town since Chris took everything from that room to the main dark world, and this can include Jevil because he represents the Joker card. Maybe Jevil's story will continue in the future. What kind of role he could play in the final chapters if he does return? Maybe he will have a reunion with his friend Sham and they will fight together, or at least they will have a few exchanges of lines. That will be interesting. But as of right now, Jevil seems to be the only secret boss that had completely vanished from the story. Like I said, Spamton has a very similar story to Jevil. It is hard to pinpoint his story because the information is all over the place, but let's try to piece together this puzzle. Spamton was a salesman that never managed to find success. Nobody bought his products and the Lightners didn't even pay attention to him. In the Light world, Spamton is a spam email, so this makes sense. Spamton's dream was to become a big shot, to make it big and become successful. But no matter what he did, nothing seems to have worked, and he became desperate and willing to do anything to achieve his dream. And that made him the perfect candidate for that mysterious figure to use. One day Spamton received a strange phone call from probably that person and he got instructions and help from them. From that point, Spamton achieved all he ever wanted: success, money, popularity. He was on the phone all the time. Later, Spamton even moved into the Queen's mansion, having his own luxurious room there, and with each day he became even more successful. The person who was helping Spamton seems to have asked him to do something for them, because after he moved into the Queen's mansion, he visited the basement frequently, and he spent most of his time there praying, but we don't know for what or to whom. The basement is a locked place where all the corrupt data is kept, and this place seems to harbor dark secrets and incredible powers that are in the interests of that person. So Spamton might have a deal with that person. In exchange for his success, he needed to investigate that place or worship whatever was down there, letting the dark take control over him. In that place there is a strange character hiding in the shadows known as Friend. This dark figure is often featured in the darkest places of the dark world and seems to be related to the dark and evil forces, but we barely know anything about them. One day everything had changed for Spamton. The person who was helping him disappeared, and with them, Spamton's success. Everything started to go downhill and Spamton lost everything, and eventually he was kicked out of the mansion. Before he left, he became obsessed with an artifact in the basement. He thought if he got that artifact, he would have his success back, but he never managed to get his hands on it. This artifact is a robot armor that holds great power. It was made by a Lightner who filled it with their hope. Hope is a very powerful element in this universe. In Undertale, hope was what allowed the player to defeat the strongest boss. So the robot was crazy powerful and Spamton wanted to fulfill his dream and get his success back. But how does he know about this robot? It is said that nothing came from that creation and the robot was hidden deep inside the basement. Before Spamton left the mansion, he received a last call from that person. They are most likely the ones who told him about the robot and how he will get everything back if he wears that armor. This person seems to have given Spamton everything just to take it all away later, to make him desperate and willing to do absolutely anything, to become their puppet. And so he did. After he left, the phone was still hanging off the handle. It looks like he left in the middle of the conversation. So one of the other salesmen picked up the phone, but they could hear only garbage noise, which is the same sound we hear when Chris tries to use the phone in the dark world, and when we enter in Gaster's secret room in Undertale. It is also the same sound we hear from the shelter if you pitch the sound a bit and speed it up by 666%, which is Gaster's number. So like Jevil, it looks like Gaster might be the one to turn both of them mad. Whatever the case, after Spamton had left, he moved in the trash zone. He lived in the garbage planning how to get the robot. He even opened a shop there, but he didn't had any clients ever. Spamton became crazy and corrupted, glitching and twisting. He struggles to even say a complete sentence, and he has a few moments where his real self comes out and desperately asks for help. It looks like Spamton is controlled by someone, but we don't know who. Gaster is a possibility, but Spamton seems to act very weird, even more than usual when he talks about Mike. Spamton mentions Mike when he talks about friends and warns Chris to not trust him because that man is a criminal. It looks like Mike was an old friend of Spamton and later betrayed him, and now Spamton wants revenge. He possibly might have also talked about Tena, who looks to be another friend of his. They were business partners. Tena wanted Spamton's success, so he offered him everything he had in hopes he will become big as well. Mike is also associated with Tena, and he warned him that something terrible would happen if Spamton signs a contract to give off his secret, but Tena did it anyway. After they signed the contract, Spamton received a phone call. His face turned pale and ran off immediately. This was probably that man warning or threatening Spamton to not say a word, or maybe this was why that person left Spamton. So he might refer to Tena when he says that man is a criminal. Maybe Maybe he blames Tena for the state he's in. But so far Mike is just a running gag about 3 guys pretending to be Mike and talk with Tena pretending to be him. Nobody seems to know who is Mike or if he is even real. In the room where Mike is supposed to be, we do see an ominous real looking microphone which could be Mike, but we can't say for sure. Mike keeps juggling from being an important character to a joke. So Spamton was a mess, crazy even more than Jevil, who seems to have wanted to surpass, which is interesting because Jevil is not a salesman, so to surpass him at what? Maybe in power since they both hold the shadow crystals, but Spamton gets hold on one much later and he doesn't seem to even notice when he has it, so it's a mystery for the moment. Eventually Spamton is found by Chris and they make a deal. Chris will help him get the robot armor and in exchange both of them will get their freedom. Spamton gives him a keygen, which is a hack used to unlock the basement in Queen's mansion, and also a disc in which Spamton uploaded himself. Chris has to take this disc to the basement and insert it into the robot so Spamton will take control of it. But why he doesn't do this himself if he knows everything? We will discuss this later when we talk about the weird route Spamton. Despite getting the artifact he desperately wanted, he is still attached to string and controlled like a puppet, even more visible now. Nothing had changed despite the promises he got. So now Spamton wants something else. He believes he could finally be free if he also gets Chris's soul. The soul is really something powerful, especially that of a human, but will that really get him free? He thought the same about the robot and he was wrong. And even more interesting, because of that soul, Chris, just like Spamton, is also a puppet to someone else. After the fight, Chris gets very emotional because they saw how despite Spamton's tries, he still wasn't able to break free. You, the player, control Chris's every action and words. They sometimes get the control, but it's only for short moments. And in the weird route, Chris struggles to oppose you, but they are unable to. When Spamton's last string is cut, he thinks that this will finally free him, but without them, Spamton becomes lifeless, unable to even move anymore. Without the strings, he cannot do anything, just like Chris. Without the soul, Chris is like a zombie, and it is also possible that they might die without it, because despite having the power to remove the soul, they always put it back. They need it. After Spamton gets defeated, he talks normally and he hopes that the gang will eventually find a way to cut their own strings, and he becomes an item and lives inside Chris's pocket. And he appears every once in a while, so he might come back again, just like in Act 3 with Tena. Inside the robot was also a shadow crystal, probably left there by that person. Maybe the crystal was there to take control of Spamton with the strings, but he was controlled even before, so I can't really tell. Or the crystal was used to power him up even more. The crystals are always related to hard-ass fights, but there is no direct evidence that shows they empower the user. The weird route, the most evil route of the game, is triggered by us, but with the help of Spamton. He is the one to give us the Torn Ring, an item that seems to take control of Noelle and become our puppet. After Noelle keeps the ring, she does whatever we say, even if she doesn't want to, and the ring is present even in the light world as a torn. In chapter 4, Chris seems to permanently implant it in Noelle, and something like a soul seems to grow inside her. Noelle even seems to be our devoted slave after we do that. So how does Spamton hold something like this? Whatever happens with Noelle seems to have happened with him as well. Just like in the moments where his inner true self asks for help, he is not himself. The only theory I have is that he got it from the dark creatures lurking around in the basement, like Friend, or even that mysterious figure again. In the weird route, Noelle freezes everyone, so Spamton manages to go into the basement and take the robot himself. So it's not like Chris had to do it specifically, or like he needed someone else to do the job. He was just too weak to pass through all the guards, but now with everyone gone, he can do it himself. He takes control over the mansion and he wants also to take control over this entire dark world, but he cannot do that because he is still a puppet attached to strings. So just like in the normal route, he wants Chris's soul, but instead he gets the Snowgrave treatment from the monster he helped create. So Spamton fails no matter what he does, even with all that power. Okay, that was quite a bit of lore for one character, but be prepared because the next one has the lore literally all over the place. The Knight looks to be the main antagonist of the game, at least so far. They are likely the one that opened the majority of the Dark Fountains, with the exception of Chapter 3 and one in Chapter 4. In the first 3 chapters, everybody talks about the Knight. They influence the other Dark Nerds to fight the Light Nerds like King, and to help them create even more Dark Fountains like Queen. The Knight also holds the Shadow Crystal, and there are hints that maybe they are the one that gave the other bosses the Shadow Crystals, and influenced them, making them mad. After Jevil meets the strange person, he got mad and started talking about the glory of the Knight. That's how King learned about them. It was from Jevil. Presumably the Knight had opened the Chapter 2 fountain, and they could have left the crystal in the robot that Spamton wanted to get. And in Chapter 4, Gerson was supposed to use the crystal that was left in his room, and the Knight created and roams around that dark world. So maybe they put it there. We don't know the Knight's origins, backstory, or even their motives. Why are they doing all of this? Ramsey says that opening too many dark fountains could bring the end of the world, so the Knight looks to be an evil person that wants to destroy everything. Everything they do and how they act really looks to be evil just for the sake of it. If the gang hadn't managed to stop the Titan, that could have been the beginning of the end. So what's the point? What are they really trying to achieve? Toby likes to make certain characters appear to be evil, but in reality they are doing it because they are broken, they want freedom and other similar stuff like this. Like Asgore and Azrael, aka Flowey, they seem evil and they are presented as evil, but they are not. The Knight could be just a desperate person that wants freedom and is willing to do anything to achieve it. It's a common theme after all in these games. But we also have Chara in Undertale, so it's not like Toby never makes characters that are pure evil, so let's not rule that out entirely. So it might be possible that the Knight does all of these evil acts for some good reason. Even in Chapter 4, where the Knight summons a Titan by creating a dark fountain inside a dark fountain, might be a planned thing. Because Chris is there, and thanks to the soul everyone managed to survive. It's like the Knight knew they would defeat the Titan. The Knight appearance is quite interesting, because they have horns that resemble antlers, something that the Holiday family has. Because of that, and the fact that the Knight uses something that looks like a bat as a sword, made people believe that the Knight might be Death, a character that had disappeared at some point, and this event is tied to multiple characters like Asgore, the other Holiday members, and even Chris. The Knight also uses their sword with their left hand, and Death seems to be left-handed. Her computer mouse is on the other side. The hand switches sometimes because the sprites are flipped, and Toby didn't make new sprites when the Knight look on the other side. But every time we see the Knight from the front, they wield their sword with the left hand. So is the Knight Death? Well, it's hard to say. Even with all of that evidence is not clear. It is hinted that Death was lost and trapped inside the dark world, but if Death is able to step in and out of the dark and light world, why she doesn't just come back home to her family? Unless there is a deeper mystery here, and something that binds her to the dark world. The Knight could be easily just another Holiday, like Carol or even Rudy. Maybe he just pretends to be sick so he could have a good pretext if someone is suspicious. Or maybe their sickness is a result of him becoming the Knight and possibly fighting darkness or other creatures. We know that the injuries can transfer from the dark world to the light world, like in the case with Birdley. If you manage to defeat the Knight, it looks like Chris slashes their friends and then they are knighted by the Knight. It's quite obvious that the Knight and Chris are working together. Toby doesn't even try to be subtle about it. It's right in front of our eyes, time and time again. Chris slashing their friends is something that the Chapter 3 minigames predicted. From these minigames we also get the Shadow Mantle, an item that is required to beat the Knight. Well, you can beat the Knight without it, but it's hard as shit, so the majority just use the mantle. In these minigames, Chris talks to a mysterious person that holds the mantle, and they are also planning something behind the scenes that might be related to the weird route. Maybe teach us how to do the route. The entire atmosphere of the minigames is dark, very dark. The minigames are one of the most creepy and ominous things in the entire game, so it must be very important for later in Chapter 6 or 7. The identity of this person is a complete mystery. We already have like 6 mysterious characters in the game, so it's hard to track who is who or if they are the same person as the others. Chris is an ally to the Knight, but this person also seems to be an ally to Chris and not us, the player, because they talk to them specifically. They also gives us the Shadow Mantle if we defeat them, and with it we defeat the Knight, so it's a complete mess. Chris just seems to work with everyone from all sides, except us in the weird route where they really hate us. Also, the minigames are important because they seem to predict the future, like scenes with Noel and Birdley, a fight with Asgore and Flowers, which will probably happen in chapter 5, a fight with Undyne and Alphys, Chris entering in the shelter, and many more stuff. Back to the identity of the Knight. For me it looks like Carol is more likely to be the Knight. Not only she tells Chris that they are always welcome in their house in a very ominous way, she also calls them at the end of chapter 4 in the weird route, in the middle of the night, asking if they are going to the festival. Normally the person that calls Chris seems to be the Knight, and even earlier in the chapter when Susie gets the guitar with one of the codes of the shelter, Chris calls for help from that person, and they say they will be right there, and moments later Carol arrives. But the phone dialogues are both red and white, so maybe this is a group call, so there's that. She also has a black shard in her room. When the Knight is defeated, Susie attacks them and a piece of their sword is broken. When Chris picks up that piece, they get a shadow crystal and a black shard that can be used as a weapon. So something very fishy is going around here with Chris, Carol and the Knight. At this point it's hard to even consider the Knight an enemy. Like they would never kill Chris, they are their ally. Even that Titan thing seems to have been under control, because Chris and the Knight never talks about it. Like, hey Chris, sorry I almost killed you. It's like they already talked about this before everything. And if not, then the Knight really tried to kill Chris. In their fight, Chris takes and deals less damage than the others, so clearly they both pretend to fight each other. This is also another proof that the Knight is not necessarily an evil person, at least not to Chris, and if this theory is true. But again, Toby can still surprise us in the end. The Knight might not even be a holiday. Hell, Asgore has horns, so who's to say he's not the Knight? He definitely isn't, but the point is that the identity of the Knight must have a dark or interesting twist, or to be about something else, not the identity alone, because that's quite easy to predict with what we have so far. Nobody who closely follows the lore would be surprised if we found out that Death is the Knight. Clearly there has to be something more to it. Finally, the Knight also seems to be connected to Gaster like the other secret bosses. Their hands have the same holes like Gaster, and they seem to have their base inside the shelter, from where we can hear that strange garbage noise. So far all the three secret bosses are tied to Gaster in some way. Jevil and Sham with their words darker yet darker, Spamton with audio with the garbage noise at the phone, and the Knight visually with their hands and the location of their base. So it is possible that all of them got their powers and knowledge from him. Or if you want to go really wild, all of these bosses or the shadow crystals might be pieces of Gaster, because he was shattered in a disaster in Undertale, and his pieces spread it across time and space and ended up here in these forms. But that's a bit too much speculation even for me. Even after chapter 5, I still think we will have to wait quite a while until we find more about the Knight. Chapter 6 and 7 are described by Toby as the end of fun and the beginning of a more darker story, and that would fit with the Knight story-wise and aesthetically. As you can see from how poorly I structured the Knight's story in this video, we don't have any concrete information about them and have to rely more on speculation than actual story. Despite having 20 minutes of screen time spread across the last two chapters, the Knight is still shrouded in mystery. So far, Toby already managed to surprise us each chapter. Like in chapter 1 we learn about the Knight, who seems to be like the final villain or something, but not even 2 chapters later they appear in the story, and he does that again in chapter 2 with the Titans. They are presented as the biggest threat of this world. If they arrived, we are doomed. But again 2 chapters later we already have defeated one. What is the real threat here? Well, I guess it is the mystery. We still have the angels, who were mentioned a couple of times and look to be important, but at this rate I wouldn't be surprised if we see one in the next chapter or something. We literally can't predict and be sure of anything, and that's the fun of it. Gerson is a fascinating character. He breaks almost all the patterns of the secret bosses established so far in the best way possible. In his early life he was a smith making hammers. That's from where he got his hammer sigil and trademark. Eventually Gerson gave up his smith career and became a writer. He mostly wrote history books such as the history of humans and monsters, which would be very interesting for us because Chris is the only human in Deltarune. Where are all the other humans? In Undertale they were simply at the surface, but what happened to them in Deltarune? Did they vanish or died? Nobody talks about them, not even Gerson, who wrote these books, despite meeting a human. But he probably already talked with Chris or his family about humans, since Toriel frequently borrow books to learn how to take care of a human. Or maybe the humans disappeared just recently, like Chris had to be born by someone. His books sold pretty well and he became a renowned historian. Later Gerson started to write fiction. At first he did it to entertain his children, which is Alvin, the town pastor. He made stories about heroes heroes and fantasies, and this leads Gerson to make a very popular book series called The Lord of the Hammer. This story was inspired by the myth of the prophecy, known as the Legend of Deltarune. This prophecy tells the story of a group of heroes that tries to fight off the Dark Force to save the world. They will eventually manage to do that, but only at a great sacrifice. The prophecy says when all hope is lost, the final tragedy unveils. To save the world, there is only one way. We don't know the rest because the solution to save the world is so bad that Susie completely rejects the idea and vows to find another way. And the prophecy is true. Everything happens bit for bit as the prophecy says, down to even the smallest details and dialogues. Usually prophecies are vague and interpretable, but in Deltarune it is the most precise thing you will ever see. It's something like at 2 PM EST, Lancer will tell Chris, toothpaste boy. I'm not even joking. Characters like Ralsei know so much about everything and what is about to happen because he knows the prophecy very well, and so far everything happened as it was written. Gerson took the story of the prophecy, but he added his own twist to it. The main character of the book series seems to be a dragon lady who will change the prophecy and save everyone, or at least that was supposed to happen. Gerson died before he managed to finish the series, so the story had an open ending. The heroes can write their own fate and story, unlike the real prophecy, which is set in stone from the beginning to the end. The prophecy is a whole different can of worms, so maybe we'll talk about it more in the future because Gerson has a lot more story to tell. Gerson was also a teacher at the only school in the town. A few characters praises Gerson as a very good teacher. Alvin says it's a shame that Chris didn't have him as their teacher. A few years prior to the beginning of the story, Gerson died of old age and he is buried in the cemetery next to the church. A bench is also made in his memory. The bench even has a small joke on it. My best ideas came from dreams, so take a rest here. If anyone asks anything, tell them you're writing, which is such a Gerson thing to say. At the school, Gerson was replaced by Alphys, who is unconfident and clumsy, so she has to live in Gerson's shadow, which makes her doubt herself even more. But Gerson's story takes a dark turn from here. Alvin, his son, secretly dug his grave and took his remains to his room in the church. Unlike humans, when a monster dies, their body disintegrates, leaving only dust behind. And as per tradition, Gerson's dust was buried alongside the hammer. Why did Alvin do such a horrible and creepy act? Well, we don't know the answer, but there is a theory that Alvin did it because they had a deal with the knight, allowing them to open a dark fountain there. Or there is another possibility. Alvin tells the myth of the prophecy at the church, and this is the place where we learn about it as well. So Alvin must know the prophecy really well. That means Alvin might have known that the knight will arrive and create a dark fountain in the church, and that's why he took his father dust there. Whatever the case, the question still remains. Why did he do that? Well, one of the possibilities is because he wanted his father back and to reunite with him. Despite how great of a teacher Gerson was, he had a bit of problematic relation with his child. Alvin had to live in the shadow of his father, the worldwide renowned author, and he was never good at writing. He was not entertaining. He had to inherit his father's legacy. He even received condolence letters from his father fans until not too long ago. Maybe it was expected of him to finish his father's series, but Alvin didn't want to trash his father's legacy and disappoint everyone, so he gave up writing for something else, to be a pastor, but his father rarely came there, so Alvin thought he was a disappointment and always wondered if his father was ever proud of him. Gerson never managed to communicate this to his son, and he died before he could tell him anything. When an object from the light world is brought to a dark world, that object turns into a darkener, so the hammer with Gerson dust on it turned into Gerson, essentially coming back to life as a darkener. Alvin didn't manage to enter this dark world and reunite with his father, so we don't know if that was his actual plan. There are other hints that Alvin knows was the deal. Like I said with the prophecy, but also when Chris asks about the shelter, Alvin is shocked and warns him to stay away from the shelter, like he knows something dark is down there. After Gerson is revived, he spent the majority of his time in the dark world trying to write a letter to his son. It's quite funny how a great author struggles to write something so simple, and in the end he even says that the words don't matter as long as the point is delivered. What Gerson wanted to say to his son was that he was always proud of him and he is sorry he never managed to say it properly. He didn't come to the church a lot because he wanted to let him follow his own dreams and to not be a burden. He should write his own story, and it's okay if it's not perfect. It will be quite interesting and emotional to see Alvin's reaction if we will be able to talk to him in chapter 5. When Gerson is not writing his letter, he shows us how great of a teacher he really is. Gerson sees a lot of potential in Susie, and she even reminds him of the dragon girl from his story. Throughout the chapter, Gerson teaches Susie a lot of good lessons from from where she gets her confidence back and the courage to keep going and fight to save the world and everyone else. She is a hero. She never thought she could be one, but Gerson shows her that she really is and she is capable of so much more. He even teaches Chris a thing or two and gives them some advice, even about the weird route. When Gerson teaches someone a lesson, he just gives them hints and lets his students find the answer on their own. He just guides them, just as a good teacher should do. Gerson also teaches Susie some combat because for some reason Gerson is also a badass, crazy strong warrior. He was a smith, but I am more than sure he was never able to do something like that when he was alive. If he's so strong, why does he even use a cane? He clearly doesn't need one. He does that just to fuck with others? I mean, he does that on a regular basis, so it seems to be the case. It's unclear why he is so strong. Chalk it up to his odd circumstances. Lightners do get weapons and armors once they enter into a dark world, but since he is now a darkener, he maybe got fused with his weapon and transformed into a warrior or something. Gerson also has a shadow crystal, but he never used it. It was supposed to be left for him by the knight or that mysterious figure, but Gerson just said no. So it looks like the crystals don't make the user more powerful. They more likely are given to already powerful enemies. Gerson kicks our asses quite hard and he doesn't go all out in this fight. He even showed us that he is capable of even more, but he does that just for the show. So just imagine what kind of unstoppable monster he would have been if he fought us as an evil enemy, just like the other shadow crystal users. In the game, Gerson almost gave up the crystal for free, but Susie refused, not until she managed to cut a piece of his hair with a sneaky tactic, and Gerson is really proud of her because of that. He really does believe that they might be able to rewrite the prophecy, especially Susie. She is the key element for that. He gives her the crystal and a very powerful axe that might be important for later. It's still a mystery why the knight or who has the crystals wanted to recruit or corrupt Gerson of all people. The other secret bosses are related to dark and dark truths. They were corrupted and their mind twisted. But Gerson is the opposite of that. He is a chill, lovely old man. Was there supposed to be a plan to break Gerson using Alvin or something? Or the one who gives these bosses the crystals want us to find them? That seems unlikely because Gerson said whoever left him the crystal really wanted him to use it, but he wasn't interested in it. Also, for what could the crystals be used for? I still believe it might make you more powerful or more likely to enhance your weapon, because I see no other use for the enemies we fight that hold them. And that seems to be the use for us, since the pure crystal is a weapon crafting recipe. Finally, Gerson makes a last heroic appearance in the final fight against the Titan. He fights alongside us and together we manage to defeat the Titan and seal the fountain. But Gerson is nowhere to be seen again after this, which is fine because that's one of the most badass exits someone could have. Like, he comes from nowhere, he fights the Titan with us, refused to elaborate and disappeared. He is truly a legend and his presence will be surely felt in the future. But this is the end of our short list. The secret bosses and the shadow crystals seems to reach an end in chapter 5. At least the crystals, because if we manage to use whatever Sham creates with them, then we might encounter even more secret bosses. That's probably the end of the traditional secret bosses. Toby advertised chapter 5 in the newsletter as the final fun adventure, because after this the sun will go down completely and only darkness will remain. Whatever will happen in chapter 6 and 7 will probably be influenced by our choices so far, and if we defeated the secret bosses, this might change a few things. Something very dark is coming from the horizon and even more sinister things are about to happen in the weird route. So enjoy the fun stuff while it lasts. After this, only tragedy will follow. At least this is what looks to be the case. Toby also said that chapter 6 makes good progress and it looks to be roughly in the same state chapter 5 was last year. So maybe we will get it next year around the same time. Toby also says that they might start the development of chapter 7 this year, and I guess Toby would want to release these two chapters together to not have a final conclusion split. They also seems to be tied together. Thank you for watching. There are a ton more videos about Deltarune on the way, especially with chapter 5 here, so subscribe if you want to learn more lore about Deltarune. If I manage to make this video before the chapter comes out, I want to announce that I will live stream the chapter as soon as it comes out, right here on YouTube, just like the last time, as a celebration of the new chapter and also to talk about the lore. So if you want to chat, discuss theories together, or just want to say hi, you will find me there. As a last note, I just want to point out that the official Deltarune site features these blue roses around, which, as we all know, are Lyanna Stark's favorite flowers. So this can mean only one thing, that Toby collaborates with George R.R. Martin and the Winds of Winter is on its way. I wonder how many people will even get this joke. I really need to work on these outros jokes.